All right, good to see everybody here tonight. Please be seated. I'd like to welcome everybody to another class of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. For those of you that are here in the at headquarters, and for those of you that are online watching, please keep in mind, if you don't have your book, I see a lot of you have your books here. If you don't have a book, it's okay. You can go online or on our Facebook page. There's a drop-down menu at the top. You can figure it out. You're probably a little more computer literate than me. But you can drop it down and get all the books that we've, or print or PDF, download all the books that we've covered so far, including this one that we're now in, which is responsibility. And responsibility, like we talked about before, to have responsibility, you really have to have everything else from the foundation that of what character is and how to develop character, great moral character. And then, of course, we have acceptance and self-control and respect, and then responsibility. And we've got a little more in store for you after this, too. So we hope you hang in there and pay attention and learn not only the peaceful solution, but learn how to teach others. Thank you for being here. Our next class, by the way, just to cover that, will be on November 26th at 5:30 p.m., and it should be Chris that will be teaching the class, so we look forward to that, too. He's always got a lot of interesting input for us. Okay, we are in the responsibility unit, and we finished up on page 6. But what I'd like to do before going any further is flip back a little bit to Lesson Plan 1, page F. Now, the lesson plan is our guide. In fact, at the very beginning of the book, you can see how the book is used, and of course there's an index and the introduction and stating what it's for, how to use it, how to follow the guidelines, how to use the program. And also there's a purpose and objective to each chapter. So here we are in procedure number 3. Procedure number 3 at the top of the page. We've covered most of that already. Today we're going to be moving on to page 7, but just looking at the top there, we're reading, understanding the main point. And of course we do want to understand that too. On page 6, and then we briefly discuss the value of having responsible people within our society and the consequences if they are irresponsible. And then it says to have students complete the exercise, critical thinking. On page 7, we're signing up for homework. Let's go over and turn over to page 6 and 7. We'll backtrack a little bit into page 6 just to cover a little bit of what we talked about. And also, we busted into a little bit of critical thinking last week, too. Not that we haven't in every chapter and every lesson that we've had, but in this case, we do have an actual lesson coming up on page 7 of critical thinking. And last week, part of the critical thinking that we talked about was of course, the consequences of the woman that was charged with abuse in the home fire and the death of the boy and so forth. And then we looked back to see who really was the responsible party in this, Yes, the end result was her doing her thing, but prior to that, there were so many things that could have occurred with many other people involved and just a drastic ripple effect that just goes on forever. So today we're looking over on page 7, though. And at the very top of page 7, it says, after reading the previous articles, it's clear to see that even if one person fails to act responsibly, the results can be disastrous. Without the positive character trait of responsibility, lives can be lost, people can be abused, and confidence in others will become non-existent. And a lot of times we think, I say we, I know myself I have, but I've looked at things that I considered small things that weren't done or didn't get done exactly how they should have been done or so forth. And for the most part, I think all of us have a little bit of that come into our lives from time to time that we look back and say, man, I could have done that differently. Or, I wasn't on time, but I could have been if I just pushed a little bit harder. Or, why did I say I would do that if I really wasn't able to do that or really didn't have the time to do it? Why did I agree to that? Why did I agree to that if I couldn't fulfill the agreement? So I think from time to time we all think back and look at those things. I could be wrong. Maybe there is someone perfect sitting here in front of me. I don't know, but I'm not there yet. So we have to keep in mind that even small things that we would consider small, well, I didn't park the car right there on the line like I was supposed to. Yeah, it hung over into this other parking lot a little bit. Well, so what is going to occur with that? Let your mind run free for a minute. I mean, what could occur with that? Possibly nothing. Nobody comes in a big car and rams your car or tears their bumper off or anything, and it just sits there, no big deal, right? But what could occur? There's a lot of things that could occur on something as small as that. You took like 1.5 feet or 2 feet of the parking space behind you. And I'm being a little bit ridiculous. Some might think, well, that's crazy. But it is a little ridiculous. But I want you to see how a small thing like that could lead into a big thing. So let your mind run free and figure out what are some of the things that could occur. From somebody needing to get in there, that's an emergency, and they're trying to get out of the road, and they can't get in there now because your car's hanging over. So since it is an emergency, they decide to stop in the middle of the street and run into the building. And, here comes a car around them because they're in the middle of the street, and the guy wasn't watching, he was texting, and he slams them and plows into their door and crushes them into the door and everything, just because you didn't park your car properly. Okay? A little ridiculous? No, I don't think so. I think it occurs every day. Similar things like that. So see how having a responsible attitude, and I like to show this each and every time, if we can get the overhead for a moment. Attitude really is everything, okay? And I know some of you are getting tired of that probably, but oh well. Attitude is everything. If you have an attitude of responsibility, you're going to be more responsible than if not. If you have an attitude of irresponsibility, you're going to be throwing things to the side and shrugging things off and, it doesn't matter anyway. They can do it themselves. It didn't cost anything. Who's it hurting? I mean, you can name all these things. Hey, possibly you've said them yourself at one time or another. So let's keep in mind that really little things, no, they can be really big things when you look at it. So let's go ahead and look at the critical thinking, and listed in the chart below are 3 occupations. So 3 different types of jobs or professions, occupations. In the first column, lists some of the responsibilities for each. In the second column, lists what could occur if that person was irresponsible. So if you have a student's manual, you've got some blank spots right there that you can fill out. If you don't have a student's manual, that means you have a teacher's manual. If you have a teacher's manual, it has some suggestions in there for you. Let's close our eyes. Let's cover those up for a minute with something, myself included. Just cover it up with something so we're not looking at the answers, okay? And so in the first column, list some of the responsibilities for each one of these things. Okay, a firefighter. So some of the answers might be, and I'm not looking at my suggested sheet, but some of the answers that I would think of would be, well, to put out fires, right? Number 2, to maybe help out in emergency situations that might not even be a fire. Firemen get called out to all kinds of things. I did find out that the thing about calling a fireman to come get a cat out of a tree, that doesn't work. So I did find that out. But who knows? If they were nearby, they might have done that too. But so the responsibilities for each one of these, the firefighters, saving lives, they're trained to go into a burning building and pull people out. They're trained to limit the loss if they possibly can. They're trained to keep it from spreading to other houses and other businesses and so forth if they possibly can. At the same time, they're also trained to, if it's going to blow, get away from it. If it's inevitable that it's going to this other building, get the people out and it's going to go, just step back for a minute, There's training, heavy-duty training that takes place. You don't just go apply for the job and they put you to work the next day. Hey, here's a fire suit, buddy. It doesn't work like that. You got to be trained because you have a great responsibility on your hands if you're a firefighter. Great responsibility. Now, some of the things that could occur if that person was irresponsible would be what? Just think. A person could lose their life, right? If you had an irresponsible firefighter and he's like, there's nobody in there, man. I didn't hear nobody screaming. Captain said, go in there. I'm not wasting my time going in there. It's hot in there anyway, If they had that kind of attitude, just shrugging things off, they probably wouldn't be a firefighter long, but really, they're responsible for people's lives. And if they have that kind of attitude, being irresponsible, someone could die, loss of property, all the previous things we mentioned that they're responsible for, of course, those things could go bye-bye with the irresponsible person. Let's look at it. Let's look at the teacher. Now, what is a teacher responsible for? And in this case, I am going to read to you what some of the suggested things are, some of the possible answers and so forth. And in the book, it says some of the responsibilities for teachers include being on time and providing an atmosphere of learning and caring for students. Let's stop right there and think back. Have you ever had a teacher that didn't fit that mold right there? Have you had a teacher that fit it sometimes, but other times they were irresponsible? Have you had a teacher that was totally irresponsible and offered the students cigarettes to smoke, played cards with them or something, gambling or worse? There's many things that occur that you hear about in the news all the time today involving male and female students and teachers. And so, many things can occur. So they're responsible for being on time, providing an atmosphere of learning and caring for students, and fulfilling the lesson plans, offering every student the opportunity to learn, grow, and succeed. Sounds great. But if they're irresponsible, then the other thing takes hold. And if they're irresponsible, as compared to responsible, what does that do to the student that they're teaching? Let me give you a little personal example. I'm sure, and I know many of you out here and have talked to you in depth, so I know you have stories when it comes to teachers and parents and so forth too. But just a little personal thing is, when I was in junior high, I was a bit of a troublemaker, so they sent me to what they call continuation. I don't know the word that would be used in the Texas schools, but that was in California. And so I was sent to continuation. It's for troubled students, can't get along. And so I went there, and what a strange place. The principal would come outside and hang out and smoke and cuss and everything else with the students. I mean, he would bum cigarettes from the students, or if a student didn't have a cigarette, he would offer them a cigarette. And now this was in, the 70s, I guess. And when the smoking thing was a little bit less controlled, and students did go off into their little groups and smoke and so forth, many did. But I thought it was very strange that this man did that. And so even though I felt some kind of connection with him there in that school, when I got back to the normal school, I had an attitude about my other teachers. I'm like, why can't you be more like him? Why can't you be more like the principal over there at the continuation school? Man, he was cool. He hung out with the students. He talked with us. We were friends, all that stuff, I don't see that in their job description right there, being friends and hanging out with the students, What's up with that? So the attitude it had for me and many other students was that all the other teachers, they could go their own way, man. It actually at the time wanted me to remain there at that place a little bit more because I wasn't being pressured to do anything. I wasn't being encouraged to excel. I wasn't being encouraged to do the best that I could do in any way. In fact, they kicked me out of there because, I did have something inside me that I wanted to do some right things, and so I didn't last very long, a couple weeks, and then booted me back. But I still had that attitude about my other teachers, and it carried with me for a very long time. So see what that did? Remembering, attitude is something that you carry with you. And so I had an attitude, a preformed attitude about the rest of my teachers. And this is what I was taught by this particular teacher / principal. And I don't know, maybe I rambled on a little bit there and didn't really get the message across, but what I'd like you to think about is the responsibility that a teacher has. In fact, the author of The Peaceful Solution, Yusra Hawkins, actually had something to say about that. If you go back towards the front there in the introduction, he talks about teachers being the true leaders of the world. And this is what he says: all teachers now have the opportunity to make a great change in the character of their students. That principal had a great opportunity to make a change in my character too. With the use of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, of course he didn't have that and he had not been taught. So I'm not condemning him for what he did. He was only doing what he was taught by his teacher previously, his professor in college, his parents, and all his lifelong experiences, okay? So you can't condemn him. You got to use that critical thinking and go back and look and see what's taking place. What took place in that person's life to bring him to this point, to where now he's affecting other people. So the teacher said, Yusra Hawkins said, you're not only teaching, you are actually molding leaders who will use what you're instilling in them to bring about better living conditions in this world. That's if you're a teacher of the Peaceful Solution. We must not fail to build moral values in the students we are now teaching. This will not just reflect in the child, but in the entire world around us. That is, your leadership will be reflected in the actions of the leaders you have taught and will teach. And so then we go on to a few pages over, right before the chapter begins, the introduction, the role of the teacher. It says, as educators, it's extremely important that we understand the tremendous role we play in the lives of our students. So let's stop right there for a minute and then think back about a teacher that had a very positive effect on your life. Now, I'm not talking about right now just teachers of the Peaceful Solution. If you're teaching the Peaceful Solution, you're having a positive effect on people's lives, especially if you follow through with that and you're the example of that in your life, to where when they see you on the street or they see you interacting or you're interacting with them, that you are interacting in the way you would expect a teacher of the Peaceful Solution to do so. Do we always get it right? No. Like I said before, man, we're not, nobody's perfect yet. You can strive to be perfect with great moral character, And so think back about that teacher. Let's go back in school a little bit. I think everyone in here knows what school is and probably went there at one time or another. So think back in school and think about a teacher that really made an impact in your life, a positive impact, that you can go back right now and play that video in your mind and hear the words that teacher is saying that encouraged you, that you will remember all your life. That teacher, that parent, that relative, that person that you knew, a boss, someone you worked for. Think about that person, because they're all teachers. Think about what they said that encouraged you in whatever manner. Forget the bad stuff you did. Let's throw that out the window for just a minute. And let's talk about the encouraging things that one teacher did for you. man, if we could keep that in our mind all day long, every day, the great things that people said to us, the encouragement that they gave us, man, we'd be going around with a smile on our face, energy that you couldn't get rid of. I think about it. But on the other hand, if we think about the ones that were less encouraging and taught us some wrong things, and because they didn't know, we can't hold it against them. But if we keep that in our mind, we're going to have an attitude of defeat, an attitude of failure. We're going to have a pessimistic attitude, and you're going to create that in your life. Attitude really is. You've got to have that attitude. We talk about helping others, in the peaceful solution, that this is really what it's all about, is helping others. Well, if you have that attitude of helping others, some call it an attitude of servitude, sounds pretty nice, right? If you have that attitude, then that's what it is. It's an attitude. It's what you got in your head. That's what you're working toward. That's what you're striving for. But if you have the attitude that, do what? Man, they can do that themselves. What are they, the invalid or something? Or I'm not doing that for them. They could do it themselves. Why do I have to wait in line? They didn't have to wait. If you have that kind of attitude, that's the kind of life you're going to live. As educators, it's extremely important that we understand the tremendous role we play in the lives of our students. Therefore, our participation in this program is essential to its success. And then it goes on to say some of the things that we can do in a classroom situation and the reviews and really getting one-to-one with people, And I'm trying to do a little one-to-one right here in this respect is to get to helping us remember the encouraging things in our lives, Okay, let's go back to page 7. So we've talked about, responsible or irresponsible, if a teacher's irresponsible. And not just a school teacher, but teachers, parents, bosses, anyone with authority in your life. And we teach those around us. If you have a brother or sister, you're teaching them by your actions. They watch you. They look up to you. But if you're irresponsible, or a teacher was irresponsible and leaving the children without proper care or supervision, students could slip through the system. And they do often. If you look at the test scores right now across the United States, they're horrible. I mean, I don't know how people just get passed and they can't even read except on like a very low level, and they get passed through high school, and some even end up going to college and can't even really, they don't even know how to add and basic computations. I remember in school they started doing the new math, and we got away from the word problems, where it gave you a real life situation on, well, if John was walking down the street and he took 12,250 steps, how many? And the place he was going was 100 yards away, and each one of his steps was 2 feet. You had to figure that out to see how far John went, and he could go with those 12,000 steps, right? Kind of interesting, but it helped us deal with normal everyday situations. So a lot of people have slipped through the cracks, and a lot of it, everything's so computerized, and every student has a cell phone, every student's got a computer, they hold classes on computer and everything, and I just I see a lot of things occurring there with that, but yet if you have a responsible teacher, things can be turned around. One that really cares. I know a few teachers that really care about their students, and it shows in the way that they talk to them. It shows in the way they ask about their day and how their life is going and share with them a little bit. I'm not talking about real personal things that might not need to be talked about, but if it needs to be, then okay. But let's take a look just remember a teacher, and again, you're teaching people every day. Remember how important it is for your example, the thing that they see taking place in your life. If you blow your top at somebody, guarantee you one of your students saw it somewhere. Somebody saw it, and it's going to have a negative impact on them seeing you be irresponsible and not practicing self-control. Again, I'm not trying to, say that I'm perfect or anything. I'm not. I make mistakes all the time, sometimes some bad choices too. But I try to correct it. I look back at the day and say, hey, what could I have done that was a little more encouraging for people, a little more helpful and so forth? And what could I have done to alleviate the way I feel bad right now thinking about it? You get a little bit of guilt and going on, and you think, man, I could have done that differently. Okay, so, but as we all know, and I mention this pretty much every class, but as we all know in the Peaceful Solution, we are taught, we're not trying to get people tied up into depression and kicking themselves all the time and everything, but we do want you to look at your life and what you could have done differently. So we have to leave ourselves room to grow. Remember that lesson? Room to grow. Don't forget, leave yourself room to grow. Don't kick yourself too hard. A couple kicks, that's fine. Go on, move on. and always knowing that there's no, it's like it doesn't stop. So you made a mistake or you made a bad choice. Come on, just pick it up and go on. It doesn't stop. You're developing great moral character. It's kind of like a road map, I've got a road map right here, and it's a little vague, but I know that, I'm going to Washington, D.C. right here, and I'm here in Texas, and I know it's that way right there, and I can see most of the big streets and everything, And so I start heading that way. And, I look and I say, wait a minute, I think I just took a wrong turn. So I find my way back, right? And then next thing you know, I took another wrong turn. I know some of you are laughing because you've ridden with me before and know sometimes I do take wrong turns or wrong exits, or decide not to take the exit at all. So anyway, you're going along there and you have to correct. You got to bring it back in to get to where you're going. And it's the same thing with the Peaceful Solution. You have a goal, which we talk about goal setting, especially in this responsibility unit. We're going to talk about some things like that a lot. But you have a goal to get to a certain place. And you make corrections throughout the day, throughout your life to get there. Even like your day, your work day. You go to work and you look at everything and you say, I've got to get this done today, whatever it might be. And you set that goal. If you set that goal and you really mean it, then you're more likely to achieve that goal and not let other little things get in the way, It's amazing how some of that stuff that seems so important that takes 15 minutes here and 20 minutes here all of a sudden goes away when you got your mind on that goal. Let's look at the plumber. Some of the responsibilities for plumbers include installing and fixing sinks, faucets, water lines, drain pipes. They also help design and install pipes so that a building's water system works effectively and efficiently. If you've never thought about that, that's a big deal because you've got the main water line coming in where you hook onto with the city or whatever, and or you have your own well system or another one nearby that you can use. Whatever the case, you've got probably a pretty big pipe. And then it goes down into a smaller pipe as it comes to you. And then once it gets to where you're going to use it, it comes into another smaller pipe or a manifold or something which separates which way which pipe is going to go where and so forth. And then it might even go down to a smaller pipe as you take it to its end resting place, And then you've got to be aware of the pressure because you've got pipes and you might have them running up the wall and over and across, and it might run for a long time. Or you just might have a little outlet right on the outside of the house that doesn't require a whole lot. Well, I mean, it still requires thought, but not as much as if you had to snake that pipe all through everything, So I'm not a plumber, don't get me wrong. In fact, I don't really like it too much when I do it. But So they're responsible for doing these things, and so a house is built or a building, commercial building is built, and the plumber comes in, designs it, does all this stuff, puts the pipes in and everything, and then boom, they turn the water on. Customer calls. Everything's working great. You know, they've tried it all and it's working great. So the responsible plumber did his job. Now, what about the irresponsible plumber? Let's take a look at that. Well, pipes could be poorly designed, of course. It could lead to having a leak and flooding a home, or not having the proper pressure. And, you know, you're upstairs and you turn on the shower and you got a little dribble coming out there. And you're like, hey, this is brand new. What's going on here? You know. Or you turn on the hot water and you got cold water instead, or you turn on the hot water and it's scalding hot. You know, think of all the different things that could occur. Now, what could be some of the consequences of that? What kind of ripple effect could we have? So here's the plumber doing his job, do-de-do-de-do. He gets it all done and everything, and okay, so the house either works properly or not, the plumbing works properly or not, but what about from there? So what about the plumbing, and then, you know, the pipe breaks, and first time it gets cold, or it's overpressurized or something, and it breaks, and the water shoots all over the living room and destroys heirloom furniture or paintings or pictures or personal belongings or whatever that can't be replaced. So now we have a problem, don't we? Or what if a child turns on that hot water and scalding hot water that comes out and the child gets burnt? Or an adult too. Or what if, you know, let your mind wander a little bit. What are all the things that could possibly occur? And then we go back and we look at the plumber and say, well, you know, I know he went to school. I mean, he's got a master plumber's license and all this stuff, you know. And so we know he went to school and everything, but what did his teachers teach him? Did they teach him how to be responsible? You're not just born with responsibility, though, don't get me wrong, in our DNA, if our parents were extremely responsible, or other people in our lives, grandparents and so forth, then there's a great possibility that we're going to have that leaning towards responsibility, okay? And so that's a plus, that's a help. But anybody can learn to be responsible and develop that great character trait, okay? So we go back and we look at the plumber and who taught him, and then who taught that one, and so forth. I mean, you got to go back a little ways to see what's really going on here. Where did that plumber that just threw things together and poorly designed it and everything, where did he learn that at? He didn't just decide to do it that day. I mean, I know some plumbers, and I know a couple that you know, they've got really high standards, and they wouldn't think of doing things the wrong way, no matter how much it would save, and no matter who got mad about it. They're going to do it the right way. And if one of their employees had to redo something, they're going to redo it because they know he's not going to stand for anything less than, you know, at least near perfection, if not perfection. So think about those things, the critical thinking. We have to really, it's not just a knee-jerk thought and put a Band-Aid on the situation. We've got to think about all these things about how did all this take place? How was this person taught? How was that person taught? How did it come to this far? You know, and so that's something we can all do and learn to do, and have a great attitude about everybody, knowing that, you know, the person could be, even that person that did things wrong, even the plumber that did things wrong, could be a diamond in the rough, you know. Just needs a little training. Just needs to know the importance of responsibility and self-control and not giving in to peer pressure and doing things the right way, you know. Let's go ahead and turn over, well, let's turn back here for a minute, I'm sorry, to the lesson plan. Let's turn over to lesson plan 1, page F again. And this time, let's look at procedure number 4. Procedure number 4. And it says to tell students that although different people have various obligations and duties, which we've discussed a few of them right here too, right? Different people have different stuff. I see a mechanic, a barber, a fisherman. I see a teacher. I see a couple teachers. I see carpenters. I see, You know, I know what some of you do for a living. I see some of you that transport things. I see some of you that are electricians, and some of you, I see people that do a little bit of everything here at the headquarters right now. I see guys that work with cement and brick, and I see guys that cut down trees. I see guys that work with animals, you know. Everybody has their own responsibilities and their assigned or chosen duties, if you will. So even though people have various obligations and duties, there are responsibilities that are common to all people. It says to have students give their opinions of what they are. And we would, if we were in a classroom situation, then have them read the section, Shared Responsibilities, which we're going to do in a moment on page 8 of our handbooks. Emphasize that ultimately we are responsible for each other. Okay, so this is where the peaceful solution comes in talking about helping others. And you remember a moment ago when I said somebody had said this kind of neat saying, that attitude of servitude, if you will. You know, it was pretty great, I thought. And so having that attitude, these shared responsibilities, makes us ultimately we're responsible for each other. You know, we need to help each other. If all people shared this understanding and treated others with compassion and respect, we would have a safer and more peaceful world. I mean, really think about it. If the President of the United States truly cared about this country over here that we're bombing and the people in it, would we be bombing them? If the other country that bombs us or kills some of the young men that have gone off to be involved in something that would be better that they weren't, probably, if they weren't killing them, you know, if they really cared about their fellow person, if they really understood and treated others with compassion and respect, would they be getting killed? Would they be killing? Would we have all this pain and agony going on in the world? No, we wouldn't. So what we want to do in the peaceful solution is we want to be those people that not only through our actions and our thoughts and our words, we're the ones that exhibit and speak this peaceful thing. We would like to teach all those that are less than peaceful how to be peaceful. Everybody's not going to want to be. Some people are going to say, get out of here. You know, they're probably going to get beat up or something from time to time. But some people aren't going to want to hear it. They're going to keep on the same track they're on, you know, especially if they're making a lot of money. That's probably true, too. But let's go on over to page 8. Excuse me. All right. Shared responsibilities. Shared responsibilities. Let's see. I've got a little note here. We're not going to read that. Okay. Shared responsibilities. Although we have different responsibilities, remember, everyone different jobs and everything, if everyone fulfills their duties as they are instructed, we could create a world where we can rely on and trust others. Of course, some people have more responsibilities than others. Let's talk about that for a minute, too. Okay, so you've got a responsibility to do something, and you've taken every precaution you could. You've left on time to try to get it done, or you left early. You had things set up in advance to get it done properly. You called anybody that you could that had anything to do with what you're trying to accomplish and let them know the whole situation. So everybody was in sync. Everybody was there. Everybody was ready to make this thing occur the way it should occur so that everybody could be seen as being responsible. And then, boom, the bottom drops out. Something unexpected. You get a curveball or a pitfall to come your way, right? It comes your way and it hits you in the head, and you look at the situation and it looks like you failed. You didn't get the thing done when it was supposed to be done. You got some people that are upset and everything else. But I can tell you this. When you look back and look at how you planned for it, and that everything was done that could be done for this thing to work out properly, and beyond your control, there was a tornado or, whatever, and it didn't get done, to hold you responsible for that wouldn't be right. You responsibly did the things you were supposed to do. So looking at this, of course, some people will have more responsibilities than others. A man with a family will have more responsibilities than his teenage son. So if that man does everything he can possibly do to teach his teenage son great moral character, and they decide to go another route, again, you'd look back at what took place, what caused this to take place, what fluctuations are there, what about the man's parents and what he was taught, and so forth and so on. A president will have the responsibility of taking care of his own family as well as the citizens of the country. So not only does he have that big weight on his shoulders about the whole country, and he's got a lot of help, though, to help him with that, but he's also got the responsibility of his own family. And then regardless of how varied our duties are, there are some responsibilities that should be shared by all. Let's see. Listen for a minute. Anybody? Just listen quietly. Do you hear any laughter and things being thrown or anything like that? Do you hear any chairs screeching and moving around? Do you hear any doors slamming or anything like that? So interestingly enough, we all here right now today have a shared responsibility of having a great classroom situation. That people would know, hey, this is a classroom. This isn't a place where you come in here to play and climb the walls and throw things at each other and make jokes and all that stuff all the time, right? So we together are sharing that responsibility of making this a classroom situation, see? That's a simple one right there. But now think about in your life, I want you to think again. Remember, we're talking about critical thinking. But I want you to think about in your own life, in your job, for instance, what do you have a shared responsibility with others to do? Now don't get too tied up into thinking about what your actual responsibilities are that are laid on you and maybe the other person doesn't have, but think about the ones that are shared. So if 3 or 4 of you get into a truck and you're fixing to go and do something, what if everyone just left their doors open? Well, the owner of the truck isn't going to like it, right? But doesn't everybody have a shared responsibility to, once they get inside and sit down, and shut the door? Simple deal, but think of how that helps throughout the day. Do you have a shared responsibility of how much water you use? Do you have a shared responsibility of getting to different places on time so that everything works properly? I know some of you that got here today were able to walk, and some came in cars and so forth, but you all shared the responsibility of parking in the parking lots, in the parking spaces out in the parking lot, right? If I walk out that door right now, I'm going to look out there and I'm going to see 99.99% of the cars parked within a marked off parking space in the parking lot, right? Would everybody agree? You can answer that one if you want. Yeah. And so there might be a few scattered cars here or there that for some reason had to park in an unassigned spot, if you will. But for the most part, everyone's there. And that's a shared responsibility. You didn't park and take up 3 spaces. You didn't park with the in a handicap parking zone, and you're not handicapped or any of that. So we share that, okay? Shared responsibilities. That's just a simple example right there. But now look at what we really need to be thinking about in the next paragraph. Keep in mind that this talks about treating others with respect, too. We're getting there. And you respect people through your words and your actions, all these things. So when we read this, have that in your mind. We are morally responsible to each other. A moral person is able to choose between right and wrong and is respectful of others. I know without, and this goes back into that critical thinking and thinking about, what brought a person to this point and so forth. For instance, if we had a situation arise where, and I'll use something of what they call race or different color or something, and someone yells something at you, a derogatory name. What got that person to that point to do that? What got that person to that point of hatred, of disrespect, and everything to do that? Was it something in their life earlier that was done by somebody else that initially they might have even had a right thought in that, well, you shouldn't do that to me. That's a right thought. It would be better if you would treat people with respect. That's a right thought. But then if they take that and they go the opposite way with it and use hatred, then what you have is a thing called like racism. Even though we all know in the peaceful solution that there's one race and it's the human race. And anytime we tend to separate and join sides like Democrat and Republican or that's my football team, I wouldn't, this is your football team, and you have competition and fight, and I'm this race and you're that race. And, when you take sides like that, it's absolutely not right. You might have thought it was right somewhere down the line, and you might have somewhere had a right thought, but it turned sour because you weren't taught the peaceful solution. So we are morally responsible to each other. A moral person is able to choose between right and wrong and keep it on that path of right. See? You might make a mistake, and you bring it back. You get back in line and bring it back to the right part, okay? You see that, oh, you had a wrong thought, you made a wrong decision, you had a wrong action, but then you choose to make it right and is respectful of others. He would never intentionally hurt others or steal from them. You might even say something that might have hurt somebody because of something they've been through in their life. I'm sure that I have, probably recently. I didn't mean to if I did, but I don't know everything that's taken place in everybody's life. And so therefore I would need to dig a little bit deeper. And yes, we should watch what we say and try not to say things that could hurt another individual. And because our words and actions do make a difference. And if you do want to show compassion and care and concern towards others, you will be thinking about these things and about your words and thinking, could this offend somebody? Is it possible that it could? Would it offend somebody if they knew the peaceful solution completely and knew me? Or would it offend somebody because they weren't really that versed in the peaceful solution and what we teach, and they don't even know me and what it was about? So when you think about those things, and I'm saying me, but I mean all of us, when we lack moral responsibility towards each other, society suffers just like that, just like I just mentioned. This is apparent by the high rate of crime, violence, and war within our world. Now, this is taking it that step further, and we're going to see where people choose the wrong way. But by being morally responsible to each other, we can avoid the hatred and hostilities that lead to the violence and war. Treating each other with respect by not being verbally or physically abusive are examples of being morally responsible. And another example of being morally responsible is getting all the facts. Remember, number one thing Peaceful Solution teaches is before you make a decision, before you jump to a conclusion, get the facts. Get the facts, man. That's what you've got to do. Get the facts. There's nothing wrong with asking questions to get facts, but you want to get the true facts also. You don't rely on the facts from the media. There's very little true ones there, even though some of it is. And some of the things that are very wrong started out as true. That's how they suck you in. You know, for something to really be deceptive and pull people in, there's probably a little bit of truth in there to suck them in, but there's a whole lot of bad stuff along the way, and then they don't know and can't choose between right and wrong because they're not discerning and educating and getting the facts. We got to be careful about that kind of thing. And we are responsible for our environment. This is the only planet in the universe that we can live on at this time. We rely on our planet Earth to sustain our lives. Yet every day, in fact, think about this for a minute. Go back and think about what the classes that we just finished in the respect unit, dealing with the environment. And, you know, we spent a lot of time on that section dealing with environment, right? And all the teachers that come up here and are able to share all these things, there was so much information brought. And I venture to say that if we look at it on an individual basis, we're probably all guilty of messing up at some point in time with the environment. Now, can we go back and correct those things? Well, I don't know if we can go back and exactly correct those, but we can start now and start making proper decisions by getting all the true facts, being educated, and then putting that to work in our life and getting others to help out and doing all of that with the true attitude of care and concern and compassion for others. So we rely on our planet Earth to sustain our lives, yet every day we deplete the Earth of its natural resources and pollute the air, land, and seas. Even our food sources are polluted at this time. Food and water contaminated by pollution have been known to cause serious diseases within the human body, and it's up to everyone to take responsibility for preserving and caring for our planet's natural resources. And you can go to like page 180, 181 right in there in the respect unit, and you can read all about this, and you can go back and watch some of the previous lessons that dealt with this. And, you know, you're going to find that it's not only what, commercial pollution, so to speak, with chemicals and everything in the water and all, but it goes way, way, way deeper than that. And you'd really have to watch the classes to figure out what I'm talking about here. And you could be responsible by going back and watching those things. You can be responsible by going back and studying all the lessons that you've missed up till now, especially if you're online. You could be responsible and do those things. And that way people could see that you are being, responsible. You're taking it. It's up to you to learn. We can't cut your head open and pour it all in. So you have to have some responsibility for it. We have a responsibility towards what we teach you, and you're responsible for taking it in and putting it to work in your life. So we've got a little bit of time left. I'd like to go ahead and go back to the lesson plan for a minute. And the shared responsibilities, the whole bottom line is that we are responsible together. If you're not responsible with your moral character and your attitude, then it's going to have a bad effect. There's just no way out of it. Everyone needs to have this great moral character to have a peaceful world. And the environment, too. We are all responsible. You can't have one person that's not pouring bad things into the water, and right next door, the person is pouring bad things into the water. Both are going to suffer the consequences. If you have a nice, clean, pure glass of water and you put a dropper full of some chemical in it or some kind of, animal blood or whatever, blood in it, something like that, what do you have? You don't have a pure, clean glass of water anymore, do you? It's messed up. And on the other hand, though, if you have a glass of blood or a glass of filthy, dirty, chemical polluted water or something like that, and you take a dropper full of nice, clean, pure water and put in there, now what do you have? You still have a messed up glass of water, man. So the person doing the right thing can't do it on their own. everybody has to work together and is responsible for working together to make it right, okay? All right, so we're going to read about procedure number 5 here. It says, discuss as a class what some of their responsibilities are, your individual responsibilities, and guide class discussion by asking students how they think they learn to be responsible for these duties. Accept as many answers as time permits, and then have students turn to page 9 in their handbooks and read the section, How is Responsibility Learned? And then it says go on to page 10. But I might read the first paragraph or so on page 9, but it's interesting because in a classroom situation, and all the teachers in the Peaceful Solution have had classroom situations before where we had groups of, 1, 3, 8, 15, 30, more, but a real classroom situation where you could take your time and go through the answers. And really, the smaller the class, the better when it comes to that. I mean, if you've got 4 or 5 people, man, talk about a great class you can have by getting full input from everybody and everyone sharing and not feeling pushed for time. It's awesome. And even in a classroom, 18 students, or I think they're packing 28 or 30 in classrooms now, but even in that situation, you can still get a lot more out of it by getting that input, that shared input from everybody. There it is, shared responsibilities. Everybody's responsible for helping out in that. So let's go ahead and look at page 9, and I'm sure Chris will go back over this. But how is responsibility learned? Now that you know how important being responsible is, and we've covered a lot of ground so far, all the teachers have, how is responsibility learned? Now this is where you as a teacher is going to have to keep in your mind how it's learned by the students too. Responsibility is a trait, a positive moral character trait that is developed. And if you go back and watch a previous class, I think it was 2 classes ago, possibly 3, but you'll see where Catan actually gave the dictionary word developed, and what it means, and I think even the etymology of where it came from and so forth. But it's something that has to grow by putting effort into it, putting work into it. You just take a hammer and a nail and you build this responsibility. It has to grow. You have to be taught. You have to put it to work in your life, and then it develops along the way. And what you've been taught in regards to how you treat others, how you treat possessions, how you work, and even how you play help you develop the character trait of responsibility. In other words, you have to be taught to be responsible in everything you do. And so this is the thing that when you see somebody and you look at that person and you just know, you look and you know something about them and you say, man, that is one responsible guy right there. I mean, I see him doing the things that are supposed to be done, keeping the rules. You could go on of the many different ways of you feel like that person's responsible, and you might know him, so you might know some of those things to be true. But like I said, it didn't just occur overnight. The person didn't read how to be responsible and say, yep, that's me, Mr. Responsibility Boy. It doesn't work like that. In any of the Peaceful Solution, in anything that's worthwhile, it doesn't just come overnight like that. You have to work at it, you have to develop it, and it grows. And then it's something in your life that occurs. It's the attitude you have, it's your muscle memory, it's everything that goes into doing the right thing each and every time. Keeping in mind, yes, you might make a mistake, but it's doing it. The more and more and more and more you practice and develop it, the less mistakes you'll make. And we're about out of time here. I'm sorry. I wanted to carry on a little bit further here, but you've probably had enough. So Chris will be taking over on this lesson, and I'm sure he'll start back at the beginning of it at least, if not a little further. And so be ready to listen and to take notes and put this to work in your life. And this week, hey, let's think about all the things that we can be, that we can practice responsibility in our life. Maybe something that we've kind of thrown to the side a little bit, let's be responsible. Let's take that one thing that we're like, I ain't gonna do that, you know. Let's take that one thing and make it something we can be responsible for and see how great it feels to do it, you know. You might even want to then take another thing that we kind of shrugged off, and you might want to be responsible on that thing too, and just it grows and grows and grows, and pretty soon we'll be seeing you walking around with a smile on your face and just wondering what we can do to be exactly like you, an example of the peaceful solution, okay? So thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you on the 26th at 5:30 p.m. again for another class, and I hope you all take this in, including myself. Thank you.